Hi everyone, I've just added some new features to one of my free add-ons for Blender called Holt tools, very creatively named. This is probably one of my more sensible add-ons. It's all about workflow improvements, helping you to do things faster in your blend files, and helping you to stay focused on your actual artwork rather than like moving through the different editors and organizing all your stuff. So I'm going to show you the original features and the new features because there's been some layout changes, and if you haven't used the add-on before, then I want to give you a comprehensive breakdown. But again, like I said, this is free, and I will leave a link below in the description if you want to pick it up. And of course, because tools like this take a long time to make, if you do find it useful, maybe consider leaving a donation as well. But anyway, let's get into it. So I'm in one of my art scenes here. I was originally going to use this for another tutorial, but I just never got around to it. But anyway, the first thing you're going to do after downloading the zip file is go to Edit, Preferences, and then go to your Add-ons tab, and then press the Install button up here and select the zip file which you downloaded. So it'll be the Holt Tools zip file. The newest version of the add-on is version 5.0, and once you've installed it, you will see a new tab appear in the N menu in your 3D view. So when I say N menu, what I mean is when you press the N key in the 3D view, it's going to expand and collapse this panel. So there'll be a few things in here. You may have the tool category, the view, Biogen if you've got one of my other add-ons, and the Holt Tools tab. And in here, you'll see a bunch of panels for organizing the different operations to help you modify your scene. We've got cleanup, selection, lighting, optimization, interface, world, and information. And each of these you can grab on the right here and drag and reorganize them as you like. Now, earlier versions of the add-on looked a bit different because they didn't have these icons, and I think the names were different. But basically, they've been given icons and simple names to make them very easy for you to find and quickly access. So we're going to go through them in order. So let's take a look at cleanup. In here, you'll see a collection of sub-panels, and these again have icons and simple names. So it's quite self-explanatory. In the outliner section, we're going to find cleanup tools for cleaning up the outliner. So this thing here on the right is your outliner, and it's basically the collection of everything in the blend file. So every object, every light, every camera. And there are several ways you can view the data in your blend file, but we're not going to go into that for this video. But anyway, when you're making your artwork, the outliner can get quite messy. So let me just set this up. If I had made my entire scene without organizing things into collections, it would look something like this. So every object is just carelessly placed in the outliner. It's very difficult to navigate, and if I gave this file to someone else, they would get quite confused. So what if there was a way to automatically organize your outliner? Well, you can see where this is going. So if we open the outliner subpanel, you'll see a button here called Organize Outliner. So if we click that, collapse the collections, you're done. Yay, woohoo. Okay, that was a bit fast. Let me do that again. So when you click Organize Outliner, it's going to take a look at every selectable object in the scene and categorize them based on their type. So we have cameras, lights, empties, objects, and if we press the arrows by the collections there, it's going to expand and collapse the collections. One neat thing you can do anywhere in Blender is that if you click on one of these collapse buttons and then drag your mouse down, it will essentially do all of them from that point onwards. So with one simple button, we have technically organized our scene, but of course, because most of the objects in this scene are objects, you would still need to do some organization in there, kind of help tidy things up, but it's a good start, and I think that's very helpful. We could also do something where we can convert the suffixes, so these are like the ending parts of names. Notice how we've got .001. I always thought these were a bit kind of ungainly, so if we press this button, it's going to convert them all to a more simplified suffix format, basically underscore number. This takes up less space, I think it's easier to read. Then the next operation is purge unwanted data. This one is the equivalent of going to File, Cleanup, and then Unused Data Blocks. I think the most obvious use case for this is if you're making materials, and then you have some materials which aren't assigned to objects and you want to clean them up from your file, you would use this operation. And then we have one final option here called Deep Clean, which does everything above. So we will organize the outliner, convert every suffix, and then purge all the unused data from your scene. So if you were at a point where you've like spent hours making artwork and you can't be bothered to tidy it all up, you can just press the Deep Clean button and it will do all of that for you. Okay, so now we move on to the Object subpanel. Now this is an interesting one because when you have objects selected, you'll notice that in the panel it says More in Edit Mode. So more features will appear depending on what mode you're in. So when you're in Edit Mode, we can see we have Recalculate Normals, Merge by Distance, and Shift to World Origin. Now we don't have to take a look at every single one of these operations, but I'll give you a quick demo. So first of all, recalculate normals and merge by distance. Sometimes the normal data for your faces is pointing the wrong way. If you press recalculate normals, it will clean that up. Sometimes you need to merge vertices by distance. So if you do that, it will bring up the operation and then you can start merging them like that. It's a very specific function. I'll show you shift to world origin in a different file, but something more useful for people I think is the set auto smooth. So notice the shading for my objects is a bit inaccurate. They're smooth shaded when they should be having some harsh edges there, but also despite having some harsh edges, they need to maintain their smoothness for the rounded areas. This is where the set auto smooth comes in. Our angle is set to 60. We have multiple objects selected. If we press set auto smooth, it's done. So we now have the sharp areas and the rounded areas. This is the equivalent of going down to the object data properties, setting the auto smooth there and having it set to 60. Another thing we can do here now is sync mesh name. This is a new feature. So if I have multiple objects selected again, notice that the mesh name is different from the actual object name. So for this one, the object is pot3 and the mesh is cylinder 7. If I press sync mesh name, it becomes the same name as the object. So this is again good for kind of organizational purposes. Okay, I've quickly moved over to another file to do some more demonstrations. So first of all, the shift to world origin operation was a requested feature from a user. I'm not entirely sure what you'd use it for, but I think a lot of people would find this useful for like very specific use cases. Essentially what it does is it takes anything that you have selected, like a vertex or an edge, and then it shifts the position of the object from that selected point to the world origin. So if I click this now, see it's now going to move the object down there. The vertex we had selected is now the point that we've shifted the object by. I think this is handy for kind of like recentering your objects in the world based on any selected point. But again, like I said, it's a requested feature. I might not use it, but someone will find it handy. Okay, so under the materials subpanel, we have removed unused slots. So for example, if an object had a bunch of unused material slots there, if we have it selected, we can press that and it will clean them up. We have fixed duplicate node groups. So for example, sometimes if you're kind of like importing multiple of the same node group, you might end up with a bunch of different versions, and you see that you have like the .001 and 002. So if you press that, it's going to clean them up so they are all now the same actual node group. So that basically resolves the problem with the duplicates. And then one of my favorite new features is the set defaults and get defaults. Now this was a requested feature by Charon, and this was also temporarily exclusive to my Patreon. Sign up to get your name at the end of videos, access to experimental files, and discounts off future products. Anyway, what this does is, this is like a really cool tool for material builders. Sometimes when you're making materials, right, you're adjusting the values on your node groups to try and get the perfect look for your material. By the way, this node group here with this age simulation for copper comes from my modular metals pack. If you want to pick it up, you can find it through my store, but it's available on Gumroad and Blender Market. So let's say I thought the perfect age for this copper was like 0.6, and maybe I wanted to start the imperfection level a bit lower to keep it a bit cleaner. Okay, so we've got 0.603 and 0.217 there. Now, traditionally, if I wanted to make these default values, I'd have to go into the node group, press N, go to the group tab, find the value, age, and then set it manually. And that's annoying. Now, thanks to Holt tools, you don't have to do that. Any number of node groups you have selected, just press set defaults, and it's now going to make those values the default values. And you can see here at the top here, 0.603, and if I go down to imperfection, 0.217. So that sets it with one button press. You can also get the defaults. So say that I set these to something else. So let me make the age like something much lower, mess with the scale. Okay, so we have the node group selected. If we get the defaults, it now changes it to the default values. So this is really important for material builders who might have like, 50 different node groups and who have just been modifying like as many values as they can. And so they've got hundreds of parameters which they want to make defaults, and it's going to take them hours. Now they can just select all of them, set defaults, done immediately. I'm really happy with that one. Okay, so now we're coming to the selection panel. This one is for doing some more complex organizational tasks. So the subpanels are select all including, select by type, and select by vertex count. So the point of this is to make collections based on different queries or conditions. So the first one, obviously select all including. This one is for getting objects which contain things in their name, and for also tagging objects with new name parameters. So for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and find all the objects with pot in their name. Remember that this object we saw earlier has pot in its name. So I'm going to type pot into the select all objects including. You can choose whether it's case sensitive, and then if I press select all including, we now have selected all of the objects with pot in the name. So essentially it's like a search feature. But now what I can do is press form collection, and it's going to make a new collection called pot, and we now have every pot object. So now instead of having to go through our object collection and just manually find all of them or select all of them in the scene, with just a couple of button presses, we've made a new collection and put them all in there. Now this also supports a tagging feature. Now this tagging feature essentially lets you add text data to the names of objects at the beginning or at the end of their name. So for example, notice how not all of these pots are glowing. What I'm going to do is select the ones which are glowing, like this, and I'm going to tag them with the string emiss. which I use for emission. It's like a shorthand name. Now I'm going to add this emission tag to the beginning of their name. So if I press prefix, they now all have emiss underscore and then their name. Okay, so this is a way of like categorically tagging objects. Now, get this, we can reuse the search feature. So if I type in emiss underscore, you don't necessarily need the underscore. Select all including, we're now selecting all of the emissive objects and we can form a new collection. So now we have the emissive ones. So do you see how you can now categorically create collections based on name data and also adding and removing tags? Okay, so that's cool, but there's more. So we have select by type. This one should be quite self-explanatory. There is a list of different types here, different object types like meshes, lights, hair, empties, curves, cameras, armatures, volumes, etc. So we could select all of the meshes in the scene. We could select all of the cameras, all of the lights as well. And then of course we have the option to form collections from those again. Now of course the organize outliner option that we used earlier has already mostly done this, but that does it for every type. If you just wanted to select or make collections from specific types and not everything, then this is what you would use. But also all of these advanced selection tools are very considerate of pre-existing collections. So for example, if I make a new light object, so we've got a new point object down here, I'm going to remove it from all collections. So now it's sitting by itself. I'm going to make a few more duplicates of that. And we can select all of the light objects by pressing select all type, but some of them are not in the lights collection. Okay, let's have them all deselected. What happens if I press form collection? Well, it knows that the lights collection already exists, so it takes the ones which weren't in the collection and then adds them, so now they're all together. So it's a fairly smart system. Okay, and then the final one is select by vertex count. This is more of a specific workflow tool. So in certain pipelines, like game development pipelines, there are vertex count budgets. It's becoming less of a problem now for specific circumstances, like with Unreal Engine 5 and the nanite system allowing for like a much higher number of vertices, but I think it's still an important point of certain pipelines. So with this, we can choose different comparative modes, so greater than, less than, or equal to, and then enter a vertex amount. So again, let's see if we can find anything more than 10,000 vertices. If I press select, there's nothing. Okay, which means that I've done a fairly good job at optimizing this scene. Let's try 1,000. Anything more than 1,000? Oh, okay, this is bad news for me. This definitely looks like it could fit under 1,000 vertices. It's probably due to like all of this bevel data. Okay, so maybe these need to be optimized. So if I wanted to tag these for someone else to optimize, I can now press form collection. It's now going to make a collection called greater than 1,000. So we know that all of these objects here are above 1,000 vertices. Now the same thing can be done for the other comparative modes. If we do less than 1,000 and then press form collection, it's going to say less than 1,000. And we can also do the equal to as well. So if you're trying to do an optimization pass or like categorically separate your objects ready for something like that, then that's going to be a useful feature. It also means that if you're passing this file onto someone who's doing retopology, they can see immediately which collections of objects need to be like prioritized or need to be given certain care or something like that. Okay, the next panel is lighting. So in previous versions of this add-on, we had the ability to control the lighting intensity of different light objects just by pressing some buttons, okay? So if I open the power subpanel, by pressing the addition and subtraction buttons here, we can add and remove energy to every light in the scene all at once. Okay, so let's try that. If I set that to 50 and press plus, okay, it's not making much change, it's quite a small value. Let me try 5,000. There we go. So we can add and subtract light value from all of the lights at the same time. But this is the additive mode. We can also use the multiplicative mode, where instead of adding a set number, it's going to take the original power value for the lights and then multiply it by a certain amount. So let's say we did 3, then it's going to multiply it by 3 times. You can also, of course, do 0.2, so it's going to make it 0.2 of the original amount. So if I do 1.1, we're going to be slightly increasing it. So you have the additive and multiplicative control over the power of the lighting. Now this is not the only thing which can be modified, because we can also do emissive materials. Many of the art pieces I do use emissive material lighting as their light sources, not traditional light objects. So I'm going to go to one of my emissive materials called backlight. Now notice up here in the add-on it says material name includes and node name includes. So this is information to let the add-on know which nodes to look for to modify their emission strength values. So if I name this material emiss_backlight, notice that the material name includes has emiss. So we know that this one is going to be searched. And then for node name includes, if I take my principled BSDF, press N, go to node, and then name it light underscore BSDF, or like we can put anything else after the underscore, that's fine. And again, it doesn't have to be light, you can customize these to anything you like. These are just the default values. Then when we adjust the power value, Holt Tools is going to look through this material, and then it's going to find this node, principal BSDF, and it knows that because it's got light in the name, it's going to adjust the strength value. Now the same thing will apply for emission shaders as well. It will also look for these. Anything which gives you the emissive light through the material. So now, if I set this to maybe 3, then press the X button to multiply, notice that if you take a look at the emission strength value down here, it's going to increase that value. And then back in the scene, we can see the effects of this. And again, of course, if I reset this, we have both the additive and the multiplicative values. So let me set this to 100. I can now add light and subtract it from the emissive materials all at once inside of the 3D scene. So let's say I had like 20 different emissive materials making up the complex scene, then we can control all of these. So here's a question, is there anything else in the scene which has emissive light values? Yes, the pots, remember these. So let me do emiss underscore, and then what in this material has emissive value is the principled, so let's give this the light prefix. Okay, so now this is ready. All of these are sharing the same material. So now theoretically, if we use this, let me try first of all setting it to 0 to test that it works. Yes. So we can now see that all of the pots and the backlighting have been adjusted. But there are more things in the scene. We have the decal, so let me set this one up as well. And now if I adjust it, you can see we have disabled all of those emissive lights. So let me try multiplying them by 5. Here we go, we now have control. Okay, yeah, so that was technically in previous versions, but something new I've added is we can now do both light objects and emissive material sources. I recommend you use the multiplicative mode for this because the power of light objects and emissive material sources is quite different. So if I multiply it by 0, the entire scene goes black because we're adjusting every source. If I multiply it by 0.2, then everything's going to go low. And if I multiply it by 5, then we're going to get much stronger values, and again and again. So now you have complete control over every type of light source from this panel. So if you set it up correctly, you never have to re-enter your materials or click on the light objects to adjust their power. You can do it just from the 3D view. But this control now goes further with color. So with the color subpanel here, we can now adjust the color of light objects in the scene. Now yes, for a future update, I still technically need to add control for the emissive light sources here. So for now, this just applies to light objects. We can choose whether to have it affect selected light objects only or everyone in the scene. So if I choose a different color like orange and then press set light color, it's going to change all of the light objects to have the orange color. We can also randomize the light color, and this will be done on a per object basis. So if I press that, every light object in the scene now has a randomized color. Let's try that again. Now we have pinks at the front and white at the back, and again slightly greenish pink there, and again and again. So if you don't know what kind of lighting mood you want to go for your scene, just press the randomized light color and it's going to roll the dice for you. Although I really like the mood of this one, but oh well, let's try a different one. Oh, maybe green. We've got a bit of like a Cthulhu vibe going. But like I said, it also works on the selected only ones. So if I choose a few area lights here and adjust those values, so now those ones are yellow, or we can randomize these. So you now have lighting control. But again, in a future update, I should add control for emissive light sources as well, because then we will have the complete suite of control. Okay, so now we're going to slow down with the features a bit. Next up is optimization. Quite a simple one. If we go to mesh, it's just a quick decimate value. So for example, if we found that this object that we looked at earlier was a bit too complex, we could quickly decimate it, but because it is a linked object, I should make it single user. So if I press F3 and then make single user with the object and object data, there we go. So if I press quick decimate, it's going to essentially reduce the polygon count down to a factor of 0.1. Now this is the equivalent of adding a decimate modifier and then setting the value down. So if I do that just to demonstrate, decimate, collapse mode, and then if we bring that down to 0.1. If you take a look at the wireframe, you can see this happening as the bevels are reducing. Okay, so that's fine. It's not clean, but it's a quick way of quickly optimizing your objects. And yes, it does apply to multiple objects. You just have to make sure that they are not linked because it doesn't work on multi-user data objects. Okay, the next one is interface, and you'll see that there's a theme subpanel. So sometimes I feel like changing the theme of my Blender file. Sometimes in the morning I like using lighter themes for software, and then in the evenings I like using darker. But having to go up to edit, and then preferences, then themes, and then choose it there is a bit annoying. So I've now moved the presets down into this panel, so so you can choose the different themes and change them easily. So for example, we have the Blender Light, then Blender's Dark, which is still a bit too bright for my liking, and then I have my Blender theme, which you can pick up from my Kurt's defaults file on Gumroad. And then finally we have the World panel. Now this one is an optimization one, which I could have used throughout this video to be honest, and it says toggle world volume. So if we look down in the world nodes, there's a principled volume node. There may also be a volume scatter node, depending on how you want to set up your volumetric effects. So what this button does is it looks for these nodes and then mutes them. So if I press that, it's now disabled the world volume. So this is good for optimization or if you want to speed up your preview for the rendering in the viewport. If we toggle it again, it's going to turn it back on. So it's a quick way of disabling and enabling the volume to help you preview your scene. This will also help with the noise as well. So if I turn off my denoising, with the volume on, it's really difficult to preview. With the volume off, it's a lot faster. So those are all the major features of Holt Tools version 5, but there's also the information panel down here created by Curtis Holt, enhanced with EasyBPY. And what is EasyBPY? Well, it's my module for helping to simplify the Blender Python API for developers by giving you an extra layer of abstraction above the Python API with functions which are closer to plain English with adaptive argument context. Okay, that's a bit of a technical sentence, but basically it's a simpler way to use the Python API for Blender, and we've been adding some new features to it recently as well. Now, like I said, if you find this useful, these add-ons take a while to put together. They also take quite a bit of skill and require a lot of trial and error. So if you find it useful, please consider donating because I was not paid to put this together and it really does help. But if you want to support this and my other projects, including these videos, then please consider signing up to my Patreon at patreon.com/CurtisHolt, or maybe check out our other products on the store like the modular metals, which I showed you earlier. That's my favorite collection of materials, specifically for metallic effects. We also have the procedural patterns pack, which I updated recently with a bunch of procedural effects to help you make all kinds of other artistic effects in material nodes. So there's just so much available that we have for you to help enhance your artwork. And with your support, there will be much more stuff to come, both free and paid. Signing up to the Patreon also gets your name put permanently on this piece of evolving artwork. I'm going to have to make some space for new people soon as well. So I think we'll do a phase 3 version of the artwork soon. And also, if you watch my videos, you know we do this thing where if you get to the end, I give you an emoji to put in the comments so I can see who made it this far. So this one is going to be a wrench or a hammer and wrench, like whatever combination you like. I will also say I'm not sure if YouTube actually likes it when I send people off site, so maybe watch a few more videos before you go and download the add-on. So have a fantastic day everyone, stay safe, happy blending, and I will see you next time.